Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for appearing again in front of this committee to discuss the Department of Defense's Middle East policy. And thank you also for the brave young men and women you represent, stationed in the United States and all across the world. This debate in our committee is a difficult one because many of our concerns have to do with broad strategic decisions being made outside the Department of Defense. However, until the administration reforms its strategy to acknowledge the unpleasant realities of the Middle East and recognize that America's security interests are and what exactly the United States strategies are and are not in these conflicts, I think Congress needs to be very cautious as we contemplate any further funding requests from the Department of Defense or any other national security agency. General Dunford, as President Obama reiterated in his meetings with European leaders this week, the United States counter-ISIS strategy ultimately relies on peaceful transfer of power in Syria from Assad's regime to an inclusive government there. Now, while certainly admirable, it's far from realistic. As Middle East journalist Thanasis Kambanis wrote in the New York Times 2 weeks ago, quote, Syria, one of the most important states in the Arab world, has cracked up, and no peace settlement can put it back together, close quote. In your professional opinion, General Dunford, what do you think the chances are that the sort of reconciliation and political unity sought by the Obama administration can happen in Syria, just given the amount of violence that we've seen there over the last 4 years, the competing outside interests, and the sectarian context of this fight? And what is the intelligence that we're collecting tend to indicate about the possible willingness of these groups to come together to form some sort of government?
Senator, I think the most difficult challenge in forming a new government is dealing with the role of Assad. And I can tell you asked about the opposition groups, that they were absolutely adamant, and that's what the intelligence tells us. They're absolutely adamant that Assad have no future role in Syria. And so until and unless the grievances of the civil war are addressed by these opposition forces, then I'd find it hard to imagine a successful political transition.
If a political solution to the Syrian conflict continues to elude diplomats in Geneva, there will not be a political sovereign to unite the various rebels who we know through previous testimony often have competing or conflicting, perhaps mutually inconsistent long-term goals as well as ideals. Secretary Carter, what will become of the weapons and the equipment that we've provided to these rebel groups if a peaceful resolution of this conflict remains out of reach? And will we simply have dumped hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment and worth of weapons into an already volatile situation?
I'll answer the general question, then we can go into more specifics, but I can't answer the general. In everything we do in there as elsewhere, we always think ahead when we're providing weaponry to a group about sort of what's the future, what's the next step. So we certainly have thought about that in that region as well. To your bigger question, which is what is the role of, I think what you're saying is what we would call the moderate opposition in the future of Syria. Our strategy, political strategy, and the one that Secretary Kerry is pursuing is that Assad leaves, the structures of the government remain in place, but without Assad, and that the moderate opposition becomes part of the government, and there is a government that can give the Syrian people what they deserve, which is a country that runs and a country that's moderate and a country that treats its people decently. We're a long way from that now, but that's the vision for Syria. And so these people have a role, is the point.
And you think that's a realistic vision, one that we could realistically achieve within the necessary time?
I think it's a necessary one to achieve because I think Assad can't be part of the future of that country.
But what if
and
he
that
doesn't
is the
go?
right-
What if he doesn't leave?
This is why it's so important that the Russians keep their commitment, which is to a political transition there. They're the ones that have the most leverage over Assad right now. It's very important that they do that because, as the chairman indicated, there's no resolution of the Syrian civil war until that occurs.
Thank you.